Hello there and welcome to another episode of Tiger Pregame here on MUTV 23. I'm your host, Brendan Lavell, and joining me today will be three guest analysts making their MUTV on-air debut tonight. And it looks like we've got one of them right here next to me. Ladies and gentlemen, Max Arnold. Are you ready to talk some college football, Max?
Yeah, I'd love to. It's great to be here, and I'm really excited for this year of college football at Mizzou, and I'm ready to get started.
All right, well, we got a loaded week coming up in the SEC, so let's get down to business. Max, the Tigers bounced back from their season-opening loss to West Virginia in a huge way, winning 61-21 in their home opener this past weekend. Obviously, a lot of things went well for the Tigers, but what caught your eye?
Well, they did do a lot of things right, obviously, in a 61-21 victory. But mostly I thought was very impressive was the offensive line. They did not allow a single sack the whole day. Drew Lock was not touched at all. So just kudos to the offensive line for that.
Yeah, definitely. Drew Lock has been he's had a clean pocket to work with in both games so far. I thought the West Virginia game, the pass blocking was pretty good too. He wasn't really roughed up that much. I'm not even sure they had a sack, and that West Virginia had a sack in that game either. So the pass blocking has been very impressive. Definitely something that needs to continue if the Tigers are going to keep winning games because Drew Lock in his first full year as starting QB needs that clean pocket to throw from, to give the Tigers the best chance to win. Mm-hmm. Now that we've talked about what went well, I want to ask you, what do the Tigers need to improve upon?
Well, something that they struggled even in this last game, the run game on the defensive side, Eastern Michigan was not, or they definitely had a lot more success than I think Mizzou football would have wanted. So if they are able to stop the run game, I think that's very important that they do that.
Yeah, most definitely. This has been a vaunted defensive line from Mizzou in the past. This has been a university absolutely touted for the defensive line prospects that seems to churn out every year. Last year, I mean, they only allowed 132, 133 yards per game on the ground. This year, in both games so far, they've allowed more than that, including to a very inferior opponent in Eastern Michigan. So definitely a lot of things to shore up defensively there. And, the next thing I want to ask you, Max, who needs to step up, besides the D-line, which we've already talked about, if the Tigers are going to have a chance at the upset against Georgia?
I'm thinking Drew Lock, he's definitely got to play well, but the running game for Mizzou football definitely needs to step up. I know Georgia has a pretty strong secondary, but their defensive line and linebackers are a little weak compared to that secondary, so they need to kind of focus their offense around that, and if the offensive game can improve through the run, I think they have a good chance in the game.
Yeah, absolutely, and as you kind of mentioned, you touched on both of them. They are so intertwined. I think that, if Drew Lock plays, early on in this game like he did against Eastern Michigan, it's going to open up a lot of holes for this run game. Drew Lock, the last game against Eastern Michigan, we all know it was a career game. 450 yards, 5 touchdowns, no picks. Last year, he only had one game with 200 yards. He had a 244-yard game against BYU. So a huge, monumental step up from from Drew Lock, even if the opponent was just Eastern Michigan. Lastly, Max, I want to ask you, what is Mizzou's key to victory against the Bulldogs? What do they need to do to guarantee a win this week?
Well, like I said, they really need to work on the run game. They need to be able to take down Georgia's defense and really, protect Drew Lock. Make sure the sacks are limited, keep the pressure off of him, and if the offensive line holds against that Georgia defensive line, I think they have a really good chance of victory.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it is going to be about battling in the trenches for both teams, both sides of the ball. It's going to be about stopping Nick Chubb defensively, that D-line stepping up like you mentioned, and it is also going to be paving way for the running game. The running game has been kind of slow to start this season. Picked it up a little bit against Eastern Michigan, so we'll see if they can maybe build on that momentum. But yeah, I think the trenches are absolutely going to be huge this game. Max Arnold, everyone, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, definitely.
When we come back, I'll be chatting with our very own Logan Ball about the number 16 Georgia Bulldogs. Stay tuned.